It is August 20th, 2005. At 7:01 p.m., a man carrying a golf bag enters the lobby of the Hilton Hotel in Cologne. He introduces himself at the reception desk as Lars Rodenstock and asks to book a double room for one night for himself and his wife. He explains that his wife will arrive in about an hour. She will bring his ID, which he unfortunately does not have with him at the moment. The receptionist asks Mr. Rodenstock to fill out the booking form, but he is unable to do so because his hand is bandaged. The courteous receptionist is helpful and fills out the form for the guest. He pays for the double room in cash. This is rather unusual in a hotel like the Hilton, even in 2005. But Mr. Rodenstock assures the receptionist that his wife will also bring a credit card to leave as a deposit. So the employee has no ulterior motives when he hands the guest the keys to room 715. The problem is, there is no wife, and Lars Rodenstock doesn't exist either. The next morning, a murdered man will be found in room 715. Nikolaus G lives in Berlin and is a successful photographer. He has already worked for several major German magazines. He has photographed personalities such as fashion designers and politicians. In the summer of 2005, Nikolaus is planning his next career steps. Working independently is not always easy. Sure, the freedom and flexibility are great, and Nikolaus certainly loves his job and the opportunity to earn money doing what he loves. But you also have to rely on a stable order situation, which cannot be taken for granted. And in the summer of 2005, Nikolaus is plagued by financial worries. That's why he is already making plans for next year. In the summer of 2006, the World Cup is to take place in Germany. To mark the occasion, he wants to produce and publish a photo book. The idea is to photograph several professional soccer players in private and create portraits. A really good idea that would certainly be successful. But at that time, there is still a year to go until the World Cup. In the meantime, Nikolaus has to hope for more orders. On August 17th, Nikolaus has a date with a friend in a cafe. He steps outside briefly to make a phone call. It's no big deal, just a normal everyday moment. But it turns out to be a decisive moment. When Nikolaus returns, he seems somehow nervous. It doesn't take long before he says goodbye. It's not entirely clear whether the phone call has anything to do with what will happen over the next 3 days, but it seems likely. 2 days later, on August 19th, Nikolaus travels to Cologne. The city is quite crowded at the time because World Youth Day is taking place. World Youth Day is a major event organized by the Catholic Church, which the Pope is also expected to attend. Around 1.2 million people travel to Cologne for the World Youth Day events. One of them is Nikolaus G. It is unclear whether he already had contact with a client or whether he traveled to Cologne on the off chance. In any case, he seems certain to find an exciting photo opportunity during these days. Hotels and apartments in Cologne were certainly well booked. Nikolaus is able to stay at the apartment of a friend who is currently on vacation. And Nikolaus seems to be lucky in more ways than just accommodation. In fact, he also receives a commission. The next day, August 20th, he has the opportunity to photograph one of the cardinals who is in town for Youth Day. Cardinal Karl Lehmann is an important figure in the Catholic Church. The shoot would therefore be very good for Nikolaus's portfolio and, of course, for his bank account. He doesn't want to turn down a spontaneous fee of 500 euros. The appointment is scheduled to take place the next day at the Hyatt Hotel in Cologne. But on August 20th, Nikolaus waits in vain for the cardinal at the supposed meeting place. Later, it turns out that Cardinal Lehmann never scheduled this photo shoot. Of course, Nikolaus has no way of knowing this. He is probably just frustrated that the supposed appointment has fallen through. But here too, everything seems to be turning out for the best. Nikolaus receives another call. It's a different assignment, but no less exciting. He is to be at the Hilton Hotel at 8 p.m. There, his client promised him on the phone he will be able to photograph Willi Weber. Weber is a former race car driver and was Michael Schumacher's manager at the time. At 7:44 p.m., Nikolaus arrives at the Hilton Hotel. At the reception desk, he asks for a Mr. Rodenstock, as previously agreed on the phone. The hotel employee knows who Nikolaus means. Mr. Rodenstock checked in just under half an hour earlier. The receptionist informs Nikolaus that Mr. Rodenstock is still in the shower, but that he will be notified as soon as he is ready. So Nikolaus waits in the lobby. From there, he calls his girlfriend shortly before 8 p.m. He leaves a message on her voicemail. In it, he tells his girlfriend that the order situation has changed again. But Willi Weber has flown in especially for the shoot with him. He is annoyed about the many changes to the plan, but is now glad that something is finally working out. He says he will call again at midnight after the job. And that is the last message from Nikolaus G. After hanging up, he puts his camera equipment on one of the luggage carts and makes his way to room 715. He will never leave this room alive. At noon on August 21st, a cleaning lady enters room 715. She will probably never forget the sight that meets her eyes. Nikolaus G lies in the room in a large pool of blood. Several of his teeth have been knocked out. The light is on, the radio is playing. But Nikolaus is not moving. He has been dead for hours. The 37-year-old was struck more than 20 times with a baseball bat. He died from traumatic brain injury and massive blood loss as a result of the injury. Nikolaus didn't stand a chance. Presumably, the perpetrator or perpetrators attacked him immediately after he entered room 715. So the homicide squad begins its investigation. The advantage from the investigators' point of view is that there are cameras in the lobby of the Hilton Hotel. These take a picture every 3 seconds, and it quickly becomes clear who the perpetrator must be. The alleged Mr. Rodenstock, who booked room 715 the night before and paid in cash. Since he claimed to have a hand injury when he checked in, there is unfortunately no handwriting sample from him. The information provided is incorrect. This means that the identity of Lars Rodenstock is fake. But thanks to the cameras, there are at least pictures of the man, or rather of 2 men. Because 19 minutes after the alleged Mr. Rodenstock, a second man enters the lobby of the Hilton at 7:20 p.m., and he makes his way purposefully to room 715. He is carrying a silver metal suitcase. The police assume that he is a second perpetrator. The sequence of events is obvious to the investigators. The 2 perpetrators lured photographer Nikolaus to room 715 under the false pretext of an assignment. Nikolaus entered the room at around 8 p.m. There, the perpetrators immediately attacked the 37-year-old. At 8:09 p.m., the first perpetrator leaves the lobby. At 8:11 p.m., the second leaves. The murder and the cleaning of the crime scene took less than 10 minutes. Afterwards, the perpetrators probably turned on the lights and the radio in the room to make it look like there were still guests there and to prevent anyone from entering. The perpetrators were obviously well prepared. The murder weapons had disappeared by the time the police arrived. This may explain the silver suitcase belonging to one man and the golf bag belonging to the other. The latter is large enough to hide a baseball bat inside. The men also thought about the surveillance cameras. Both pulled their baseball caps down low over their faces. Nevertheless, through painstaking detail work, investigators managed to produce composite sketches. The police are under great pressure to solve the case. This pressure also comes from the media. The tabloid press in particular has been quick to jump on the case and is spinning the wildest theories. Nikolaus is said to have been researching the art mafia before his murder, so perhaps that could be related to the crime. In any case, the homicide squad assumes that the crime was professionally planned. According to the head of the squad, at least one of the perpetrators must have done something like this before. Traces at the crime scene were deliberately covered up to make the investigation more difficult. The police have ruled out robbery as a motive. Nothing is missing except Nikolaus's cell phone, and no thief would have passed up the expensive camera equipment. But because the perpetrators were so meticulous, the investigation is proving difficult. For several months, the police are in the dark. In December 2005, the case is featured on a television program about criminal cases. Unfortunately, no valuable clues are forthcoming. Ultimately, it is tireless police work that solves the case, even if it took a long time. In their search for clues, the police really followed up on everything. All of Nikolaus' contacts were checked, including an ex-girlfriend of his. Her name is Monica K. She's a television actress and also active in theater. Some time ago, Nikolaus took a few photos of her for her portfolio. Monica and Nikolaus's relationship ended a few years ago, and it is not her that the police are targeting. But through Monica, the investigators come across someone who seems suspicious, namely, a 29-year-old man named Daniel C. When it becomes known in the summer of 2006 that he is under suspicion, he is already in prison. This is because in November 2005, he sold 1,500 fake concert tickets for Bon Jovi and Depeche Mode on eBay. He is estimated to have made 160,000 euros from this. When he was arrested for this, he also had a loaded firearm with him. Not only that, Daniel C. had been on the run since 2002. At that time, he escaped from prison and went into hiding in the middle of Germany. The man, who was in prison for various document fraud and theft offenses, repeatedly used different identities and names. Ruprecht Polenz, Franz Saver, and on August 20th, 2005, Lars Rodenstock. Daniel C. was just as creative with his phone numbers as he was with his false name. The police were able to determine that he used 4 different numbers just to prepare for the murder of Nikolaus. But he also used one of them for his concert ticket scam. That's how they finally caught up with him. After Daniel C. was confronted with the allegations, he immediately named a man who was supposed to be the second perpetrator. A man named Agron B. Daniel and Agron know each other from a gym. Agron is said to have worked there as a karate trainer. However, Agron comes under suspicion solely on the basis of Daniel's statements. This will become important later. Now that they have his name, the police are able to reconstruct Daniel's schedule on the day of the crime quite well. At the beginning of 2005, Daniel had already tried to meet Nikolaus in his hometown of Berlin to discuss a supposed job. However, Daniel canceled the appointment at short notice. In August 2005, there were further attempts in Cologne. Shortly before the crime, Daniel and his accomplice bought baseball caps for protection and a golf bag to store the murder weapon at 5:56 p.m. in a shopping mall in Cologne. This also explains why the alleged appointment with the Cardinal at the Hyatt Hotel was canceled. At that point, Daniel C. was still on his way to Cologne. He first had to travel from Hamm in a rental car. That is why a second alleged photo shoot with Willy Weber was apparently organized at the Hilton. And that is where Nikolaus G. was lured into the deadly trap. But the most important question remains unanswered. Why did Daniel want Nikolaus to be dead in the first place? In August 2007, the 2 suspects stand trial in Cologne. Daniel C. and Agron B. are accused of the joint murder of Nikolaus G. According to investigators, the motive for the murder was jealousy. At the time of the crime, Daniel was engaged to Monica. The two have 2 children together. Daniel is said to have read Monica's diaries, and from them, he learned that she had at least once had a crush on Nikolaus. Although this was years ago and Daniel and Monica were engaged in 2005, as mentioned, this is said to have made Daniel so jealous that he decided to kill Nikolaus. In the past, he's said to have been violent towards Monica herself and one of their daughters. The district court later described Daniel C. as intelligent, eloquent, business-minded, luxury-loving, dishonest, contemptuous of others, very engaging, persuasive, and manipulative. This fits in quite well with what we know about his behavior and his previous convictions. Daniel C. does not deny in court that he is responsible for Nikolaus' death. However, he claims that it was not murder. Rather, the 37-year-old was supposed to be given a beating, but not because of the relationship between Nikolaus and Monica. According to Daniel's lawyer, that relationship never existed. The defense attorney reports that the murder victim and Monica were never close in any way. Rather, Daniel had given Nikolaus an assignment. Daniel is said to have given Nikolaus 5,000 euros to remove sensitive photos of Monica from the internet. Although Nikolaus accepted the money, he did not keep his part of the agreement. According to his lawyer, Daniel wanted to confront Nikolaus in the hotel room and had the co-defendant with him for support. The two wanted to teach Nikolaus a lesson and destroy his camera equipment. However, the situation escalated on site because Nikolaus resisted so violently. This is contradicted by how insidiously Daniel C. proceeded and how quickly the crime was committed. It is quite clear to the court that he is a murderer. The situation is quite different for the second defendant. There is not even any evidence that Agron B. was in Cologne at all in August 2005. There is absolutely nothing to prove against him. The only thing incriminating him is Daniel C.'s statement. And with his numerous fake identities and scams, it's fair to say that he's not exactly the most reliable source. Therefore, the co-defendant must also be acquitted. Even after the acquittal, the chamber still assumes that a second person was involved in the crime. But there is no evidence to suggest that it was the co-defendant. Who the second perpetrator could have been has not been clarified to this day. Whoever the man with the silver suitcase is, if he had anything to do with the murder of Nikolaus G., he got away with it. Unlike Daniel C., the court considers it proven that he lured Nikolaus into the deadly trap and brutally murdered him in the hotel room. He is sentenced to life imprisonment in November 2007. Daniel appeals, but the verdict against him and the acquittal of the co-defendant are upheld by the Federal Court of Justice. It is a truly gruesome thought that the second perpetrator in this case was never caught, and the murder of Nikolaus is simply senseless. It is incomprehensible that jealousy over a past infatuation apparently drove Daniel to murder. Nikolaus even had a steady girlfriend, while Daniel was engaged to Monica and the father of her children. Even if you look at it from the perpetrator's perspective, there wasn't really a conflict in this case, just the ego of a perpetrator with a long criminal record. Feel free to write your thoughts on this case in the comments. By doing so, you'll also be supporting the channel, just like you would by liking or subscribing. Other than that, there's not much else to say. I wish you a good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're watching this video, and I hope to see you again in the next one. Until then, bye everyone.